Something strange is going on in many remote communities of Peru. The men are armed and high strung as they patrol the area. The women have their kids on strict curfews, and even though outsiders are relatively welcome, they are met with trepidation. A guide must be with them at all times, and they must always keep their distance from all children and youth. The real horror begins at night, when the sun hides behind the canopy and unnerving silence shrouds the village. It is eerily quiet. Everyone is in bed, but no one is sleeping. They're all waiting for a sound, a scream, a gunshot, running footsteps, anything that will confirm their fears. Their only reprieve is daylight, when it is safe and things can go back to normal. Somewhat. So what has these communities so terrified, so on edge? It would be a creature so perplexing but so surreal. You would think it was a badly thought out urban legend or creepypasta. But that is not the case here. Oh no. This rabbit hole goes a little deeper than that. So let's take a leap and see where it goes. Los Pelacaras, translated as the face peelers, have been in the minds of the Peruvian population since the 2010s. Although some people would argue that a fear of the Pelacaras existed in the early 19th century, there was just no name for it back then. But there are a couple of things that everyone agrees on. First, what a Pelacaras looks like, and second, what it does to its victims. Most people have recognized the Pelacaras as being humanoids, standing as tall as 7 feet and wearing dark hoods. The only thing visible are their glowing yellow eyes. Their faces, on the other hand, cannot be seen, either due to being obscured by shadows, or they are covered by what resembles a gas mask. Their heads are described as quite large and egg-like, and they appear to be wearing technologically advanced equipment. Examples of those are hover shoes, or backpacks with jet propulsion, which allow them to walk normally in mid-air. Terrified villagers have also mentioned that these creatures are hard to kill. One man recounted coming across the Pelacaras one night. He saw what appeared to be a very large man crouch in the distance, but it wasn't until the supposed man stood to his full height and exposed yellow glowing eyes that the frightened villager fired his gun. Unbothered by this, the tall figure shone a lantern at the man's face. The man fired again and again, but the creature showed no sign of being wounded. It hovered above the ground by several feet and vanished into the darkness. As for what they do to their victims, well, it's pretty self-explanatory. They're face stealers. Like something out of a nightmare, these entities cut and remove flesh and fat with almost surgical precision. What I found so fascinating about the Peruvian Pelacaras was its similarity to American UFOs. Tall creatures with large heads? Check. Futuristic equipment? Yep. The removal of skin and organs? Doesn't that sound like the livestock mutilations of the 70s? It all sounds a bit silly, doesn't it? But while it may sound like a fun campfire story to us, there's real fear, actual fear, of these creatures in small rural communities in Peru. And so great is their terror that community leaders have begged for an intervention from the Peruvian military, but to no avail. But I digress. Where was I? Ah yes. Thanks to these similarities, I thought this was a cut and dry case of imagination mixing with paranoia, with a little sprinkle of rumors distorting reality along the way. In fact, I had no reason to believe that the origin of the Pelacaras was anything but benign, sort of like the Flatwoods monster from West Virginia, which turned out to be one poor spooked owl in a very dark night. But that is not the case here. According to witness testimonies, The Pelacaras has been spotted around a community composed mainly of the Iquitos indigenous tribe. The area, found in the district of Alto Nanay, has had an unfortunate history since the late 1800s. Outsiders, mainly Europeans, found the Amazon basin attractive due to the rubber trees, which led to the rubber boom. Las carrerías or slave raids came next, as these rubber plantations required a large workforce to function. What followed next left the native populations physically and psychologically scarred. Later in the 2010s, perhaps earlier, illegal mining wrecked the area. This new scourge brought mass deforestation, the spilling of toxic waste, mercury in particular, and money laundering upon the local villages. But where am I going with all of this, you might be wondering? Well, this would explain the strange but familiar look of the Pelacaras. The dark hoods, the masks, the lanterns, even the so-called advanced machinery that they use might have all just been simple mining gear at some point, exaggerated over time. To us outsiders peering in, it would seem like the Pelacaras is more of a symbol of the foreign and the unknown than an actual cryptid. In fact, some native peoples like the Awajun believe that the Pelacaras doesn't look like this, but instead resembles a Caucasian man in his late 50s, often wearing sunglasses and riding a motorcycle made out of gold. So the Pelacaras isn't real, right? Well, no, but we knew that from the get-go. But where does that leave us, though? The answer is not that simple. As I mentioned earlier, the area is plagued with criminal activity, except it has now evolved from illegal mining and money laundering to drug trafficking and the production of these drugs, and even much, much worse. These criminals are well aware of the native people's deep fear of the Pelacaras. In fact, rumors have been circulating that they are exploiting this very fear by bringing the Pelacaras to life. And in doing so, it keeps the locals off their trail, allowing them to continue their illicit work. It may sound like a stretch, but it would at least explain why this Pelacaras is so hard to kill. Bulletproof vests are not hard to come by when you're in that kind of work. It could also explain the large heads, as it could be that they're wearing helmets underneath the dark hoods. As for their hovershoes and propulsion backpacks, maybe I'm just cherry-picking here, but perhaps the villagers exaggerated in the hopes that it would draw attention to their area, and thus bring help to their people faster. And it would be understandable, as these villages are very remote, often requiring a 6 to 10 hour boat ride, plus a hiking trip through the dense rainforest. Well, needless to say, between the rubber boom of the 1800s, the illegal mining, and the mafias running rampant now, it's understandable why these villagers are so mistrustful of the foreign and the unknown. To them, the Pelacaras is as real of a threat as a serial killer would be to us. But what worries me is how far they're willing to let their fear and paranoia take them. Innocent tourists have already been caught in their crosshairs before, although thankfully they made it out okay. Nevertheless, crime and Pelacara sightings are not slowing down around these areas, making the villagers more cautious and unforgiving. However, there is a ray of hope in Operation Mercury, or Peru's answer to illegal mining. It has its problems, sure, but it finally sent out the much-needed help that these areas required. Deforested zones are slowly healing, mining hotspots are being cleared, and thousands of miners have either been arrested or relocated. But the gold trade is worth billions, and it is now known that a few multinational companies deal with illegally mined gold from Peru. So I guess we shall have to wait and see if things improve for the Iquito people. In the meantime, if you ever travel through the Peruvian Amazon, please exercise some caution. You don't really know who or what you'll come across.